If you look at a map of Australia, it seems pretty clear why 95% of the country is empty. But there are other countries that have similar geography. So why are most Australians only found along the coast or in a few inland cities? In this video, we're going to try and answer why 95% of Australia is empty. Welcome to my channel. It's me, and you probably clicked on this video because you noticed that Australia doesn't look like it should be empty, but it is. And the reason for that is not what you would think if you didn't know anything about Australia. If you have no idea where all the people are, then you probably live in Australia. Okay, maybe not you, but it might make sense if you don't live there. Australia is the smallest of the 7 continents, but it's entirely controlled by one country. This means that the way this country allocates land for development, agriculture, and conservation plays a big role in who lives where in Australia. And these policies have resulted in many Australians living near the coast or in the few places that have fresh water. So how big is Australia exactly? Australia is the 13th largest country in the world at 7,692,024 square kilometers. To put this into perspective, it's about the same size as the lower 48 U.S. states, which have a population of roughly 250 million people. The entire United States, including Alaska and Hawaii, is about twice the size but has a similar population to Australia as entire landmass. This makes Australia one of the most sparsely populated countries in the world. The entire country has a little more than 26 million residents, putting the population density at about 3.5 people per square kilometer. California alone has about 40 million people, and Texas has about 30 million people. Both of these states are also much larger than Australia. California is about twice the size, and Texas is 3 times the size. There are actually a few small U.S. states that have a similar population to Australia, like Connecticut, Delaware, and New Hampshire. They're just much, much smaller. It should be noted that much of Australia is uninhabitable, but this isn't because of the terrain or weather. We'll get to that in a minute. Much of Australia is claimed and used by Aboriginal Australians. They've lived here for tens of thousands of years. But when white Europeans began colonizing the area in the late 1700s, they forced the Aboriginals off their land. Over time, the colonists made it illegal to live on Aboriginal land unless you were specifically given permission. All of this land was taken and divided up among white settlers. Today, much of the Aboriginal land is still owned by these families, but there are only a few places where you can actually go and visit. These reserves make up about 2.5% of Australia's land. Only about 3% of Australians are Aboriginal today. The government does allow them to live on their land, but most Aboriginal Australians live outside of these areas. Outside of the Aboriginal lands, there are 2 other major reasons why 95% of Australia is empty. The first thing is that Australia is the driest inhabited continent on Earth. In 2022, Australia had its wettest year on record. On average, though, it's very dry. It's so dry that when it does rain, it causes massive flooding. Then the next year it floods again and everything burns down. This is especially true in the central part of the country. Here you'll find the Great Victoria Desert, the Great Sandy Desert, and the Gibson Desert. When you hear about bushfires in Australia, it's usually here where they happen. It's hard to say exactly how much of Australia is affected by bushfires every year because they vary so much. But Australia always has bushfires somewhere in the country. During an El Niño event, bushfires in Australia can become catastrophic. An El Niño is when the waters of the eastern Pacific near the equator are warmer than normal. When this happens, Australia sees drier than average weather, which leads to more bushfires. The last El Niño was in 2015 to 2016, and it led to the worst bushfire season on record in Australia. There were over 5,000 fires burning across the country at the same time. This burned over 35,000 square miles and killed or displaced an estimated 1 billion animals. So, because of Australia's odd position in the world and its abnormally dry climate, most people avoid moving to the middle part of the country. So, let's look at the actual numbers. We mentioned earlier that California has about 40 million people, and it's about twice the size of Australia. If we compare the two states side by side, you can see that California has a population density of about 255 people per square mile. Australia's population density is less than 1 person per square mile. To make things even more wild, Florida is a similar size to Western Australia, which has about 2.6 million people. That means Florida's population density is about 10 times greater than Western Australia. But why is the middle part of Australia so dry? Australia is so far south that it should actually be quite wet. After all, it's surrounded by ocean on almost all sides, but Australia gets most of its weather from one area. You see, the prevailing winds in the southern hemisphere move from east to west. The air, as it moves across Australia, picks up moisture from the ocean. But as it moves over land, it loses all of its moisture through evaporation. By the time it reaches the western side of the country, the air has no moisture left and it starts to sink. When air sinks, it heats up and becomes less likely to hold any moisture. It also begins to suck up moisture from the ground, leading to even drier soil. By the time the air reaches the center of the continent, it's dry and hot and will cause more evaporation. This means that most of Australia is basically a giant desert. The only place that receives any significant amount of rainfall is the east coast and parts of the north and southwest of the country. The east coast receives most of its rain from the sea, but it also has tall mountains along the coast. As the moist air hits the mountains, it rises. As it rises, it cools and condenses, forming clouds and causing rain. Because of this, you'll never find a desert along the east coast of Australia. Most of the rain in the northwest comes from the monsoon winds from the Indian Ocean. These winds begin in India and blow across the ocean towards northern Australia. As they hit the land, they rise and cool, causing rain. But these winds are seasonal and only blow for part of the year. In between these areas, Australia is mostly desert. As we mentioned before, Australia is the driest continent on Earth. But the weird thing is that it doesn't actually receive that much less rain than other continents. Africa, Asia, and North America all receive around 850 millimeters of precipitation per year. South America gets 750 millimeters, Europe gets 700 millimeters, and Antarctica gets 200 millimeters. Australia gets 500 millimeters of precipitation each year. That's less, but it's not terrible. But there's one key difference between Australia and these other continents. In the rest of the world, when it rains, it rains. You might have a few dry months and a few wet months, but in general, you can count on rain falling somewhere in your area every month. In Australia, most of the rain falls in 1 or 2 months every year. In March and April, Australia receives 140 millimeters of rain on average. But in December, January, and February, they only get 40 millimeters. And there you have it. Now you know why 95% of Australia is empty. Australia is huge, but most of it is desert and prone to massive bushfires. But that's just one of the many interesting things about Australia. Do you know any interesting facts about Australia? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. I'm the host, and until next time, stay safe, stay educated,